Hello all and welcome back to D&D Basics. My name is Annie and I work at the Pikes Peak Library District. Today we are going to be discussing the basics of how magic operates in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I wasn't able to discuss the magic system in my previous videos on the basics of combat and character creation, so if you wanted to make a magic class character, this is the video for you. Now, magic is a key component of the D&D world and lore. There are magic weapons, magic items, magic potions, and of course, magical spells. Each spellcasting class has a unique way of learning, preparing, and casting spells. This also includes each class having a specific list of spells they are able to learn. There are also several schools of magic, but no matter the source of the magic, it will always operate in the same way mechanically. First, let's talk about the schools of magic. The schools of magic are abjuration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation, illusion, necromancy, and transmutation. Abjuration spells are protective in nature, though some can have aggressive uses. They create magical barriers, negate harmful effects, harm trespassers, or banish creatures to other planes. Conjuration involves the transportation of objects and creatures from one location to another. Some spells summon creatures or objects to the caster's side, while others allow the caster to teleport to another location. Some conjurations even create objects or effects out of nothing. Divination reveals information, whether in the form of secret, long-forgotten glimpses of the future, the locations of hidden things, the truth behind illusions, or visions of distant people or places. Enchantment spells affect the minds of others, influencing or controlling their behavior. Such spells can make enemies see the caster as a friend, force creatures to take a course of action, or even control another creature like a puppet. Illusion spells deceive the senses or minds of others. They cause people to see things that are not there, to miss things that are there, hear phantom noises, or to remember things that never happened. Some illusions create phantom images that any creature can see, but most insidious illusions plant an image directly in the mind of a creature. Necromancy is quite possibly one of the most infamous schools of magic. These spells manipulate the energies of life and death. Such spells can grant an extra reserve of life force, drain the life energy from another creature, create the undead, or bring the dead straight back to life. Creating the undead through the use of necromancy spells such as Animate Dead is not a good act, and only evil casters use such spells frequently. This is good to keep in mind while working on your character build, especially with regard to your character's alignment. And finally, transmutation. These spells change the property of a creature, object, or environment. They might turn an enemy into a harmless creature, bolster the strength of an ally, make an object move at the caster's command, or enhance a creature's innate healing abilities to rapidly recover from injury. Now that we know a bit about the schools of magic, it is no surprise that the magic system of D&D has a lot of spells. Pages and pages of spells. A whole chapter of the player's handbook is dedicated to just listing out all the spells. What spells you can get depends a lot on what class you are, and what level your character is, and many other factors. Try not to get overwhelmed by the amount of spells available, though I know it can be really intimidating. So, how are spells organized? Every spell has a level from 0 to 9. A spell's level is a general indicator of how powerful it is, though sometimes a simple low-level spell can get a lot of use with some creativity on your part. Cantrips, which are simple spells and can be cast easily, are level 0 and can be cast as many times as you like without it taking up a spell slot, which we'll touch on next. The higher a spell's level, the higher level a spellcaster must be to use that spell. However, spell level and spell character level don't correlate. For example, typically to use 9th level spells, a character has to be level 17. Before a magic user can use a spell, they must have the spell firmly fixed in mind or have access to the spell in a magic item like a wand. Members of some classes, like bards and sorcerers, have a small list of spells they know that are always fixed in mind, while other magic users, like clerics and wizards, undergo a process of preparing spells and usually have a wider variety of spells they know. This is detailed further in the class descriptions. However, in every case, the number of spells a caster can have fixed in mind at any given time depends on the character's level. The higher the level, the more spells you get. Now, regardless of how many spells a caster knows, they can only cast a limited number of spells before resting, minus cantrips as mentioned previously. Just like a video game, your magic power gets depleted with usage. Because of this, every magic casting class, except warlocks, has a chart of how many spell slots of each spell level a character can use at each character level. Warlocks, being the way they are, have a set amount of spells known that don't increase in the same way other magic classes do. Along with that, warlocks can't gain spells past rank 5. On the other hand, they get other benefits such as invocations, which I would be happy to discuss in depth in a different video. Let me know if you want to see a video on how all of the classes operate in detail. Now, I know this description has been a bit confusing, so here's an example. If your character is 3rd level, they may have 4 first level spell slots and 2 second level spell slots. A starting level 1 character typically has 2 to 4 cantrip slots and 2 or 3 first level spell slots. This is listed in those class charts I mentioned above, as it does vary a bit depending on your specific magic class. A wizard starts with 3 cantrips and 2 first level spells, while a sorcerer has 4 cantrips and 2 first level spells. Warlocks have 2 cantrips known, 2 spells known, 1 spell slot, and the slot level is first level. When a character casts a spell, they expend a slot of that spell's level or higher, effectively filling the slot with a spell. One way to think of it is that the spells are fitting into grooves, small for a first level spell and large for a 9th level. This way you can use a first level spell in a 9th level slot, but a 9th level spell can only be used in a 9th level slot. This allows for more flexibility when spell casting in case you end up needing to use a different spell than what you expected. Don't worry, when your character has an extended rest, all used spell slots become available again. Now, why would you want to use a lower level spell in a higher level slot? Beyond what I stated regarding flexibility and creativity in using spells, a lower level spell in a higher level slot takes on the higher level when being cast. For example, if you cast a first level magic missile in a 2nd level slot, the magic missile takes on the power of a 2nd level spell. Basically, the spell expands to fill the groove it has been placed into. This can be useful since some spells, like magic missile and cure wounds, can have more powerful effects when cast at a higher level. Some spells have a special tag that says Ritual. This means that this spell can be cast following the normal rules for spell casting, or as a ritual which takes 10 minutes of in-game time, longer to cast than usual. But using it as a ritual means you don't use a spell slot. This also means a ritual casting can't be cast at a higher level, even if the normal spell usually can be. To cast a spell as a ritual, you need the ability on your sheet to do so as a feature. The caster also has to have the spell prepared or on the list of spells known unless the character's ritual feature specifies otherwise, like the wizard. So, now that we understand a bit more about spells in combat, how do you actually cast a spell and what does it do? A spell usually requires a single action to cast, but some can require a bonus action, reaction, or more time to cast. Make sure you check that when picking out your spells for your spell list. We'll go through each of these special cases one by one, starting with bonus actions. A spell cast with a bonus action is especially swift. You must use a bonus action on your turn to cast the spell, provided that you haven't already taken a bonus action that turn. You can't cast another spell during the same turn, except for a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action. I didn't touch on reactions much in my Basics of Combat video, but reactions in combat are essentially special abilities, spells, or situations that allow you to take a special action. A reaction is an instant response to a trigger of some kind, which can occur on your turn or on someone else's. Attacks of opportunity that I talked about in the combat video are an example of this. When you take a reaction, you can't start another one until the start of your next turn. If the reaction interrupts another creature's turn, that creature can continue its turn right after the action. In terms of spell casting, some spells can be cast as a reaction. These spells take a fraction of a second to bring about and are cast in response to some event or trigger. If a spell can be cast as a reaction, the spell description will tell you exactly when you can do so. Finally, there are certain spells, including rituals that I talked about previously, that have longer casting times. This can be minutes or even hours. When you cast a spell with a casting time longer than a single action or reaction, you must spend your action each turn casting the spell, and you must maintain your concentration while you do so. I'll talk about concentration in just a moment here. But if your concentration is broken, the spell fails. However, you don't expend a spell slot. If you want to try casting the spell again, you must start over. There are many details involved with spell casting, and each of those has their own separate subcategories of information. We'll now be talking about range, components, duration, targets, and areas of effect, all of which are incredibly important to know to plan out your attack strategies. First, range. The target of a spell must be within the spell's range, much like a ranged attack from a bow or crossbow. The target of a spell can be a single individual or a single area in space depending on the type of spell. Most spells have ranges expressed in feet, just like ranged weapons. Some spells, however, can target only a creature, including yourself, that you can touch. Other spells affect only you, which show as having a range of self. Spells that create cones or lines of effect that originate from you also have a range of self, indicating that the origin point of the spell's effect must be you. We'll discuss this further when we talk about areas of effect. Once a spell is cast, its effects aren't limited by its range unless the spell's description says otherwise. Next, we have components. A spell's components are the physical requirements you must meet in order to cast it. Each spell's description indicates whether it requires verbal, demonstrated by a V, somatic, an S, or material, M, components. If you can't provide one or more of a spell's components, you are unable to cast the spell. Now, most spells require the chanting of mystic words. This is the verbal component. The words themselves aren't the source of the spell's power, rather the particular combination of sounds with specific pitch and resonance sets the threads of magic in motion. Thus, a character who is gagged or in an area of silence cannot cast a spell with a verbal component. Spellcasting gestures, or somatic components, may include a forceful movement or an intricate set of smaller gesticulations. If a spell requires a somatic component, the caster must have free use of at least one hand to perform the gestures. Finally, casting some spells requires particular objects, which are specified in parentheses in the component entry of each spell listing. These are your material components. A character can use a component pouch or a spellcasting focus, which are listed in the equipment section, in place of components specified for a spell. But if a cost is indicated for a component, a character must have that specific component before they can cast the spell. A spellcaster must have a hand free to access a spell's material components or to hold a spellcasting focus, but it can be the same hand that they use to perform somatic components. Moving on, we'll talk about the duration of spells. We touched on this briefly with regards to concentration over multiple action spells. A spell's duration is the length of time the spell persists. A duration can be expressed in rounds, minutes, hours, or even years for high-level spells. Some spells specify that their effects last until the spells are dispelled or destroyed. Many spells are instantaneous. The spell harms, heals, creates, or alters a creature or an object in a way that can't be dispelled because its magic exists only for an instant. On the other hand, some spells require you to maintain concentration in order to keep their magic active. If you lose concentration, such a spell ends. If a spell must be maintained with concentration, that fact will show up in its duration entry and the spell specifies how long you can concentrate on it. You can end concentration at any time with no action required. Normal activity, such as moving and attacking, don't interfere with concentration, The only factors that affect concentration are casting another spell that requires concentration, as you can't concentrate on 2 spells at once. Taking damage. Whenever you take damage while you're concentrating on a spell, you must make a Constitution saving throw to maintain your concentration. The DC, or difficulty of the saving throw, equals 10, or half the damage you take, whichever number is higher. If you take damage from multiple sources, you make a separate saving throw for each source of damage. Being incapacitated or killed. Obviously, you can't concentrate on anything, much less a spell, if you're passed out or dead. The DM may also determine environmental factors that can play into losing concentration, such as a wave crashing into you while concentrating or something like that. The DM may also require you to succeed at a DC 10 Constitution saving throw in these instances as well. Now, we're going to move on to targets. Typically, a spell requires you to pick 1 or more targets to be affected by a spell's magic. A spell's description tells you whether the spell targets a creature, object, or point of origin for an area of effect spell. Unless a spell has a perceptible effect, a creature might not know it was targeted by a spell at all. More subtle magic typically goes unnoticed unless a spell says otherwise. To target something, you must have a clear path to it, so it can't be behind total cover, which we talked about in the basics of combat video. If you place an area of effect at a point that you can't see, and an obstruction, such as a wall, is between you and that point, the point of origin comes into being on the near side of that obstruction. If a spell targets a creature of your choice, you can choose yourself unless the creature must be hostile or specifically a creature other than you. If you are in the area of effect of a spell you cast, you can target yourself. This is good to note for buffing spells and healing spells. I've mentioned it several times now, but you may be curious what area of effect actually means. Certain spells allow for an effect to cover an area, which means multiple creatures can be affected at once. A spell's description specifies its area of effect, which typically has one of 5 different shapes: a cone, a cube, a cylinder, a line, or a sphere. Every area of effect has a point of origin, the location from which the spell's energy erupts. The rules for each shape specify how you position its point of origin. Typically, a point of origin is a point in space, but some spells have an area whose origin is a creature or an object. Some origin points can be the caster themselves. A spell's effect expands in straight lines from the point of origin. If no unblocked straight line extends from the point of origin to a location within the area of effect, that location isn't included in the spell's area. Next, we'll go into some detail on each of the areas of effect. First, cones. A cone extends in a direction you choose from its point of origin. A cone's width at a given point along its length is equal to that point's distance from the point of origin. A cone's area of effect specifies its maximum length. A cone's point of origin is not included in the cone's area of effect unless you decide otherwise. Next, with cubes, you select a cube's point of origin, which lies anywhere on a face of the cubic effect. The cube's size is expressed as the length of each side. A cube's point of origin is not included in the cube's area of effect unless you decide otherwise. A cylinder area of effect has a point of origin at the center of a circle of a particular radius, as given in the spell description. The circle must either be on the ground or at the height of the spell effect. The energy in a cylinder expands in straight lines from the point of origin to the perimeter of the circle, forming the base of the cylinder. The spell's effect then shoots up from the base or down from the top to a distance equal to the height of the cylinder. A cylinder's point of origin is included in the cylinder's area of effect. Spells with line areas of effect are just that. A line extends straight from its point of origin in a straight path up to its length and covers an area defined by its width. A line's point of origin is not included in the line's area of effect like cones and cubes. Finally, there are spheres. You select a sphere's point of origin and the sphere extends outwards from that point. The sphere's size is expressed as a radius in feet that extends from the point. This means that the sphere's point of origin is included in the sphere's area of effect. Now we're on to the last few steps of magical spells. We'll talk about saving throws, attack throws, and combining magical effects. We have briefly discussed saving and attack throws in the Basics of Combat video, but spells can be a bit more complicated than your average sword swing. Many spells specify that a target can make a saving throw to avoid some or all of a spell's effects. The spell specifies the ability that the target uses for the save and what happens on a success or failure. The DC to resist one of your spells equals 8 plus your spell casting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus plus any special modifiers. There's a lot of numbers to keep track of when playing a magic class, so be prepared for that. Some, but not all, spells require the character to make attack rolls to determine whether the spell effect hits the intended target. Your attack bonus with a spell attack equals your spell casting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Most spells that require attack rolls involve ranged attacks. Remember, you have a disadvantage on a ranged attack roll if you are within 5 feet of a hostile creature that can see you and that isn't incapacitated. Fun fact, however, you can combine magical effects. The effects of different spells add together while their durations overlap. The effects of the same spell cast multiple times don't combine, however. Instead, the most potent effect, such as the highest bonus from these castings, applies while their durations overlap. Or the most recent effect applies if the castings are equally potent and their durations overlap. For example, if 2 clerics cast the Bless spell on the same target, the character gains the spell's benefit only once. They don't get to roll 2 bonus die. Okay, we have gone over a lot of topics, so now I'm going to go through some examples to help give you some better visuals. First, we'll go over what a spell description looks like and how to understand it. Then we'll look at a typical magic class build to understand the sheet better. And finally, we'll do a short sample battle to better understand how magic plays out in combat. So, here's what a spell description looks like. This is one of the most well-known and classic spells in all of D&D, Magic Missile. You can see the name on top. The spells are listed in alphabetical order in the player's guide. It shows what level the spell is and what school it's from. In this case, first level in Evocation. We have the casting time of 1 action, the range, and 2 components of verbal and somatic, as well as the duration being instantaneous since it's a simple attack spell. It then goes into a description of the spell, the damage amount and type, and what this spell will do at higher levels. It's fairly simple when you look at it and understand everything that we've gone over. Now, not all magic users can use all spells, as I've mentioned. If we go to the start of the chapter on magic spells, you can see lists of what spells each magic type can use, and there are even some spells typically non-magic users can wield, like rangers and rogues. We can see on the list that wizards and sorcerers can use the Magic Missile spell, but none of the other classes can. Make sure you keep this list in mind while building your character. You don't want to pick a spell that you can't actually use. Speaking of character builds, now we'll go over what a magic user's sheet can look like. Here we have a pre-generated wizard character created by the D&D team that we will be using for this example. If you want to look at other examples of pre-generated characters, visit the website listed in the description. We can see here that there is a lot of general information. For example, in the wizard features, it states that intelligence is your spell casting ability. If you look at the abilities section, you will see that int, or intelligence, is one of the highest modifiers at a +3, so all spell modifiers will have a +3. This adds into the attack modifier for a total of +5, as the starting proficiency modifier is +2, and then we add the intelligence modifier. This will change depending on your class and your modifiers. Each class's spellcasting modifier can be found in the class sections and descriptions. The character also has a high dexterity, which is useful in saving throws and to avoid attacks. This makes sense since we can see the HP of this wizard is only 7 with a 1d6 hit die. This also lists all of the spells known for this sample first level wizard, which are the cantrips, at-will spells, of Acid Splash, Firebolt, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp, and the first level spells of Burning Hands, Detect Magic, Mage Armor, Magic Missile, Shield, and Thunder Wave. You can have a separate sheet of all the spell descriptions for ease of use and to quickly look up what each spell can do, rather than have to look it up in the book each time. In fact, I recommend you do it that way. The skills are also focused on the wizard's talents, such as using Arcana for the understanding of magic, magic items, or what other spellcasters are doing. We can see the spell slots of first level and 2, showing we can have 2 first level spells. The spell save DC is 13, but this is very spell dependent, and sometimes enemies can't avoid spells. Sometimes if they succeed, they take half damage, or if they can succeed, they can avoid the spell hitting them at all. This is why it's important to have your spell descriptions nearby. Now that we've done a quick run through of this character sheet, let's see how magic can operate in a combat scenario. So here's going to be our very, very simple mock battle. The gist of this is mostly just going to be seeing how spells operate in combat rather than running an actual combat. But if you want me to run an actual full-scale sample combat session in a video, let us know. So we're going to start out and say that it is now our wizard's turn. This is our first level wizard. Now if you'll recall from his sheet, he can use as many cantrips as he wants, but he only has 2 first level spells. So we're going to save those. We're going to start with the Acid Splash attack. So, Acid Splash has a casting time of 1 action, as many do, a range of 60 feet, components of verbal and somatic, and the duration is instantaneous. Now, the fun fact of this particular spell is you do not have to roll to hit your opponent. This is just going to automatically hit them. And so let's check. Is our opponent within range? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. He's within range. Now, you can target 2 opponents with this attack, but we're just going to have our 1 here. Now, the target has to succeed on a dexterity saving throw, or they're going to take 1d6 acid damage. So, we're going to say he fails, he's going to take his 1d6. So, take your 1d6, you roll. 1d6 plus 1 damage. This guy just took 6 acid damage to the face or something. But he's not going down yet. Our wizard is going to battle onwards. So, that didn't work. Well, that's okay. Our wizard has many fantastic and wonderful spells and cantrips. So, now he has decided to up the ante a little bit. He's going to pull out one of his actual first level spells. He is going to use Burning Hands. Burning Hands is first level evocation, but this is a cone area of effect, starting from self, and takes 1 action. So, obviously, 5, 10, 15, he's not within range, so we're going to have to move 5, 10, 15, perfect, and then he has to make another dexterity saving throw. If he fails, they take 3d6, or half as much if they succeed. But we're just going to say this guy is just really not having a good day, and he is now going to be taking 3d6 fire damage. Now remember, this is a cone, so if there were other enemies, it would be spreading out. But since he's pretty much in the direct line of fire, we're just going to go with it. 3d6. 1, that's 2, 5, and 1. 8 total damage from our Burning Hands. This guy is just really not having a good day. But he's not down for the count yet. Unfortunate. That's alright. Our wizard still has a first level spell slot, plus many of his cantrips, so we are okay. This guy is just still not going down, so now let's say this guy moves in to try and take a swipe at him. He successfully dodges and has decided he needs to back up a little bit. He doesn't want to be near this guy. This is a bad time. Fortunately, he has magic missile up his sleeve, which has a range of 120 feet. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Easily within range. Now, with magic missile, you still do not have to roll to hit this guy. A lot of spells, they're just gonna hit. And this guy cannot make a saving throw. So he is just really not gonna have a good day here. So when our wizard casts magic missile, 3 magic darts hit our little archer dude over here. And each dart deals 1d4 plus 1. Well, there we are. 4 plus 1 is 5. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. So 5, 2, 3. Total of 10 damage that our friendly archer over here is taking. Now, normally an opponent that a first level is fighting would already be down by now. We're just going to pretend this guy is just really trucking along today. So we've got a couple more spells that we've got in our arsenal. But now our wizard is out of spell slots. Cannot use any more of his first level spells. But we still have some more cantrips up our sleeves. So let's try using some of those. We are now going to be trying Ray of Frost. Let's say this guy moved up again. He's trying to go on the attack. We don't like that. Let's say we're going to move. We're going to try and move way over here. We're getting out of his way. We don't want to be near this guy. So Ray of Frost is an evocation cantrip. 1 action. Needs to be within 60 feet. And we have pretty much a direct line to our enemy here. Now, this is a ranged spell, so you do need to roll to attack. So there's my d20. Roll to attack. We'll say he succeeds. Yay! And again, all of this is listed in each spell description, so really make sure you study your spell description so you know when you need to roll attack rolls, when you don't, when you need saving throws, when you don't, and all sorts of other details that are listed inside them. So, Ray of Frost, instantaneous. This guy is going to take the hit, and he's going to take 1d8 of cold damage, and his speed is reduced by 10 feet until the start of the next turn. So we're going to take our 1d8 here. He takes 5 damage, but now he is significantly slower, and we can avoid him. He is still not going down. He is only going to move a little tiny bit because he is just really having a day today. And so our wizard has decided that this is enough. We're going in for the kill here. So he's pulled out his last evocation here, his cantrip of Shocking Grasp. Now, Shocking Grasp is an interesting spell because it is a melee spell. The wizard has to touch the enemy for the spell to work. So, we have to move up. We have to be within 5 feet because we have to be touching, and 5 foot is touching. And we need to grasp. Now, you do get an advantage on the attack roll if the target is wearing armor made of metal. But we do still need to see if we rolled a hit. Woo, we hit. Good job. Good job, team. So, now our target is taking direct 1d8 lightning damage and can't take reactions until the start of their next turn. So, we're going to take our 1d8 again. Gonna roll. 5 damage. He is electrocuted, icified, burned, just really having a bad day, and he's going down. And our wizard reigns triumphant. So this is a general idea of how these sorts of spells are going to operate, and if you can imagine their different areas of effect, that will significantly help. And just keep in mind, your grids. They will help you a lot. And there you have it, the basics of magic in D&D 5th edition. In another video, I'll go over the magic classes in more depth, so keep an eye out. But for today, I'm Annie with the Pikes Peak Library District, and I will see you next time on D&D Basics.